Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Recently, I had the privilege of speaking with Australian mindfulness coach and author Kate James. You might recognize her from the Insight Timer app. In our conversation, which was recorded for the Reconnection Club's resource library, Kate talked about how not feeling good enough can manifest in specific behavior patterns, which Kate explained in a post she wrote on her website, and I'll link to that post in the show notes. I found this very interesting and I wanted to share it with you. So here's how that part of our conversation unfolded. But another layer of embeddedness is our bodies and how we are kind of stuck in our nervous systems in a way. Like our nervous system decides that there's an emergency going on or slowly unfolding in our lives. We are in an emergency and then we're stuck in that physically. And you wrote You've written so many great, useful, helpful blog posts on your website, which I'll link to. But you wrote one called When You Don't Feel Good Enough. And you outlined what you call 4 hidden patterns of not feeling good enough. And brilliantly, you have drawn parallels between these patterns of behavior that go with not feeling good enough and states of the nervous system. So I wonder if we could just, so that people can see if this is something they might identify with, if you could just go through very briefly, maybe just say one sentence, 1 or 2 sentences about each of these patterns of behavior.
You know, I wrote this because I started to notice in my clients there seemed to be these 4 patterns that were happening, and I realized they really do link back to the stress responses. So the stress responses are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Some people haven't heard of fawn. That's essentially people pleasing, just kind of giving in about your own needs and meeting everybody else's might be a way of saying that. So I noticed in the fight response, it tends to show up as a bit of an over-functioning. So you're constantly on, you're productive, you're driven, you might be a bit perfectionistic, you're wanting to be in control. That's one that I find pretty familiar, actually, the over-functioning. And typically we don't rest, we don't allow ourselves to stop. We're always the ones doing, and we're not just pausing and going, okay, what would it look like to be here for myself, to really take care of myself? The next is the flight response, which can often show up as avoidance or numbing behaviors, actually. So, we want to get away from the emotions. So numbing behaviors are common in all of us, and actually even kind of things that we would consider to be a bit addictive. We don't want to admit those things, but we all have our ways of escaping the real world. So it could be scrolling through social media, it could be binge watching television, but it could be things that are a little less helpful for your health, like, drinking a lot of alcohol or taking drugs, or wanting to just eat lots of sugar, or, whatever it is that brings you that comfort. Again, we want to notice when that is coming up. We don't want to be really hard on ourselves and say, well, you're just a terrible person because now you've just eaten a tub of ice cream, but rather it seems like you needed some comfort in that moment. And these things are the kinds of things that we turn to for comfort, but they're a way of escaping. They're a way of fleeing. We might do it as well where we kind of withdraw from relationships, the other relationships in our lives that are still rich and valuable. So that's the second one. The third is the freeze response, which is where we go into kind of procrastination or even a state of paralysis. I can't do anything. I can't get myself motivated. We know what that feels like. And then we start to, again, get into the self-judgment. What's wrong with me? I'm just hopeless. And that can end up leading us into a bit of a depressive state, actually. And then the final one is the people pleasing or over accommodating, thinking that I can prove that I'm good by just being there for everyone else and putting everyone else's needs first and really forgetting about myself. So this is kind of a simple overview of the way that I've seen these things show up. But I think at the core, all of them are about us trying to prove to ourselves that we are good and, valuable and lovable just exactly as we are. And, my solid belief is that every one of us has been put on this earth with a unique set of gifts. They might look very different to the gifts that your neighbors or your partner or your other family members have. But you are a unique human being and you are worthy just exactly as you are at this moment in time of love and belonging and, kindness and self-care. That's true of everyone I've ever met. It really is.
In those few minutes, Kate helped me understand how certain behavior patterns can be linked to habitual states of the nervous system, how our fight response when we get stuck there can result in chronic overfunctioning, being driven or perfectionistic, and having trouble resting. In this excerpt, Kate also identified behaviors of the flight response of the nervous system. Of these, she mentioned avoidance, numbing, and social withdrawal. Through those behaviors, we seek safety by fleeing from contact with the world, with others, and even with our own thoughts and feelings. If we're in a freeze response, Kate said we might experience procrastination, paralysis, or lack of motivation. When we are frozen, it's as if we're keeping ourselves small and quiet. We might feel safer, but we're not necessarily moving forward. Lastly, Kate mentioned the fawn response. Kate herself will be the first to tell you that fawning over others is not so much a distinct state of the nervous system as it is a relationship strategy. But it's often presented along with the other three because of how early in life we learn this response and how closely it's tied in our bodies with survival. The behaviors Kate named for the fawn response were over-accommodating and people-pleasing. Of course, there's nothing wrong with choosing to accommodate or please others. The key here is choice. When fawning behaviors don't feel optional, when they are automatic and or extremely hard to let go of or deviate from, that's when the fawn response is likely in play. If you're like me and Kate, you probably recognize in yourself at least some of the behaviors of fight, flight, freeze, and or fawn. Because for so many of us, that's just part of being human. We want to feel that we're good enough, that we're valuable and lovable. And we are, just as Kate said there at the end. In other parts of our conversation, Kate offered practical wisdom on what it means to live well, how to come alongside ourselves with self-compassion, and how to set intentions rather than goals so we can live our values every day. Reconnection Club members can listen to my entire interview with Kate James or read the transcript at reconnectionclub.com/Kate James. It's also easy to find our conversation anytime in the Reconnection Club resource library under Expert Interviews. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.